If I'm on right now and people are seeing me looking at my phone, I apologize. If I'm not on, then this won't matter, and you guys will be like, "Oh no, we're on." I love it.
My
Uh,
face.
Katelyn Thomas.
Hello.
Oh my God. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm staying sane.
Are you? How are we staying sane? I feel like I'm not staying sane. That's one of the things that if
Yeah.
if you'd asked me a week ago if I felt like I was sane, I would have said 100. And then if you asked me the like 30 minutes after that, I would have been like, "Are you okay?" Cuz you're asking me the same question. And now and now I'm here and I'm just like, "Ah, okay. Haven't left my house since last week at all. Like not even on the balcony, I realized today.
What?
I stepped out to the balcony today and I was just like, "Oh, I just realized I haven't stepped outside in a week."
I saw a headline on an article today that was like, "Remember weather?"
Yeah.
I
Remember
was like,
when it mattered?
hardly, but yes, I have a faint recollection.
100. Yo, every time I ask my Alexa, I'm just like, "What's the weather today?" And it tells me and I'm just like, "Why am I asking you?" Like I'm not going outside. Like
You just need to know.
Alexa's just like, "Oh, it is blah 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 with chance of snow." I'm like, "Alexa, do I look like I'm going anywhere?" Oh my god. It heard me and it's yelling from the other room. I'm sorry. That's this thing has ears of a superhero.
Nah, I don't like those. They're freaky.
Oh, I know. I definitely 100% should not have one, but it does help like the sanity of talking to a machine that pretty much says anything I want back. It's helped a little. Just a smidge.
That's fair.
A smidge.
Yeah.
I realize people who are watching will see me looking into the camera, but I realize you're seeing me from another camera and I always forget that. So I apologize if it doesn't look like I'm making eye contact with you.
That's okay.
Okay.
Totally fine.
So Katelyn Thomas is a journalist, is a was at in J school at Concordia, if I'm not mistaken, and worked at one of the most amazing places that has ever existed, not just in Montreal, but in the entire city, country, planet, and universe. And I say that having traveled to all those places in my dreams and some in the real world. Um, but yes, Katelyn, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I know this was kind of last minute. Originally, we were so I messaged you like what 20, 30 minutes ago
Yep.
asking if you'd be down to do the show at some point in the future. Like I meant to say some point in the future, realizing I never said in the future. And you know what? I gotta say, I appreciate the fact that you did not say, no, jackass. Like, I need some time to prep. Like, can you give me a few minutes or a couple hours or a couple days? You're just like, you know what? Let's do this, and I respect that.
I had enough time to eat my grilled cheese, so I was totally fine with it.
I really appreciate it. I really do because so I usually when I don't have a guest, what I do is I kind of just hang and watch YouTube trailers for new shows. And I was doing that in between the time I spoke to you and now, and I had like three that I was like, these will be okay, but I was just like, this isn't going to be the greatest. Like Saved by the Bell has a new trailer, yay!
What is a new trailer? What'd you say?
Saved by the Bell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're relaunching the series on the Peacock network, which or Peacock streaming, which is the new Universal Studios, Universal NBC studio thing.
Like a Netflix, but for NBC.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm so exhausted of all of these different ones.
Yeah, yeah.
They're gonna charge me $15 a piece and have exclusive content on all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Netflix was starting a revolution and unfortunately created what is probably going to be one of the most devastating situations to our wallets if we want to watch all these shows.
Yeah, I think that one day they're probably all gonna have to just. You'll be able to buy like a bundle pack, and then it's just gonna be like cable all over again.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't think they're going to have a choice because you can't. I mean, Disney already has a little bit of a lead do in their style because Disney owns so much. They bought Fox, and then they turn around and they have, because of a deal they made with Comcast, they now essentially own Hulu in the States, and they also own ESPN, Nat Geo, because they bought Lucasfilms and Marvel. They have all those things, so they're yeah.
True.
What have you been binging in this pandemic?
I do this thing where I just put Gilmore Girls on in the background of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I rewatched Lost recently when this whole thing started, but then I just tried to read books because I was like, I need to not. I don't know, because I find that when I binge stuff, I'm on my phone at the same time, and I'm just like scrolling mindlessly through everything. So I decided to read a couple books instead.
And what were the titles? I apologize. I'm trying to tag you, but I didn't have you tagged, but I'm just going to share the video anyways. Because I want people to know you're there, so I'll tag it after.
Okay. I read A House in the Sky, which is about that journalist who's she has held captive in Somalia for like 15 months.
Oh, wow.
Which really put quarantine into perspective, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting to read. I think that's why I'm still fine. It's just because I was sort of like living vicariously this awful situation.
Yeah.
And then I read The Glass Castle, which is also a memoir, but it's just about this. She's also a journalist. I don't do this on purpose, I swear.
Oh, okay.
It was just about her like really sad upbringing. So I think that they both helped me, appreciate where I'm at and not freak out as much as I probably would be otherwise.
I gotta say, I probably did that when I was in high school, and this is gonna sound really horrible, but it's what I did, and I'm gonna be honest about it. When I was in high school, anytime I got a pimple, I would think to myself, at least I'm not as bad as this other person who had more pimples. And I remember, as and I remember as I got older, and once I started to look back at some of the things I thought, I was just like, man, Brian, that's not cool. That's not really a nice way. But it was the only way, because when you're a teenager, you have so many things going through your mind, and you're just so many emotions, and you're just feeling weird all the time. So I don't feel bad about it as much as I understand it was a very, very much a coping mechanism for teenage Brian to be like, at least I'm not as bad. I'm not in as bad a situation, which is the flip of, and similar to what you were saying, I should be grateful for the things I have. But at the time, I couldn't think of it that way. Like, it wasn't, 15-year-old me wasn't thinking I should be grateful. It was more just like, at least it's not this bad.
That's cool though. I feel like you're surrounded by people who also think that way.
Yeah.
So you know that's what they're thinking, and then you're like, yeah, so I'm good because I'm not as bad as that person.
That's fair. Okay, Thank you for absolving 15-year-old Brian of his sins.
You're very welcome anytime.
When I go back in time, I'll tell him, Katelyn has absolved you. She explained this to me. I didn't even get it. And then 15-year-old me will be like, who the hell are you, you creepy old man? I wanted to brag about some of the things that you've done recently. You were saying that, I was actually talking about the fact that you recently got hired and locked in, and you announced a job that you got.
Yes.
Yeah. But then you were just like, oh, do you mean my award? And I was just like, flex, girl. All
I'm
day.
Sorry, that's what I was tweeting about today, so I thought you were talking about today.
Whoa. Why on earth would you apologize for being good and being recognized for being good?
I don't know.
There you go. So do you want to tell people what you won and what this is, what it means?
Yeah, okay. So it was basically, it's an RTDNA award, which is, I hate to say I'm not super familiar with with that type of award.
RTDNA?
Yeah, it's like Radio Television Digital Network Award, I think.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah. So, but it was for a documentary that I worked on with one of my Concordia profs and 4 other Concordia students, also with CTV. And It was just a mini documentary about this First Nations community north of Thunder Bay that was doing this really cool climate action project. so it was one of the coolest things in my undergrad, was getting to go to Thunder Bay with my prof and to go tell this story that was really, really interesting, and also like a little bit sad, but we were kind of focusing on the happier part of it, which was just the climate action, rather than everything that led to where they are today. So yeah, it was just really cool, and I'm happy that the story won an award, because I think that it's a really important one.
That's beautiful. And yeah, you're right. It stands for Radio Television Digital News Association. I mean, that winning an award at any point probably just feels amazing. Did you even know that it had been submitted for an award, or that it was eligible? Was it just one of those things where it's like, oh, we're just doing this because we believe in the importance of this story?
Well, my teacher submitted it for everybody. Like she did all the work and didn't tell us until she found out that we won. So yeah, we found out.
That is so dope.
Cool. Yeah.
That is so dope.
And then there was the whole, I don't know if I'm assuming you live in Montreal, you heard about the whole lead investigation. I also
yeah.
that, and that was nominated. It didn't win one, but it was nominated, or it won. I think it won one in Saskatoon. It's like a national thing.
Okay.
Didn't win any for Montreal, but yeah, that was really cool to work on as well.
So you're essentially just out there slaying regularly as a journalist.
I'm trying.
Just snatching these jobs up and building a little mini empire, and will one day win a Pulitzer, and then people will just be like, I remember when. That's
the dream, I guess. Seriously, my dream is actually to work at the New York Times.
Oh, dope.
So we'll see about that, because that's going to be difficult. But yeah, that's what I'm working towards.
Dude, that is so awesome. So full discretion, Brian doesn't read much. I'm very much a television geek. As most people who know me will know, I joke regularly about having a severe television addiction, and most of my friends laugh and say, "Oh, Brian," and I always laugh along with them and then cry inside a little bit because I know it's true. But joking aside, I think it's super cool that like your ambition is the New York Times. Can you explain, like, at what age did the New York Times become that dream? Like, what was the thing that made that the dream?
I don't know if there's like, I can't really trace it back to any point in my life. I just feel like, for me, as somebody who, just went through 3 years of journalism school, I think that is kind of like the epitome of like good journalism. I don't know. I do read a lot of media, and I just feel like they're, they do lean a little bit to the left, but I feel like generally speaking, the reporting is really, really fair. And that's not something that you find everywhere, especially because of like, the companies that own the media outlets. And so, yeah, I just think that it's a really cool, cool is the wrong word. I don't know why I said that. No. It's a really great outlet. And I feel like that's where I would want to work.
I feel like cool's a fair word, though. The New York Times is recognized as...
New York Times is cool. It's such a weird thing to say. Cool. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But,
As a like, I'm a millennial. Are you born? I believe you probably are born after 95.
I was born in 93. I just look 16.
Okay. Okay, so you're a millennial also then.
I am, yeah.
You're the end. Okay, that's really cool, because I'm one of my friends. Shout outs to Eva. Her and I always joke around because she's born in 94, I believe, and I'm born in 83. So we regularly joke about how I'm a real millennial, and then she's like, "No, I'm a real millennial." And there's always that back and forth. And then we were supposed to launch a podcast called Inverse Millennials. It's already locked down, guys, so don't try and steal it. We already like took the name and everything. But the whole idea was going to be about how me as a millennial and her as a millennial would have these discussions about how we understand things in culture and community and entertainment and stuff like that separately. So like TikTok, for example, was something that like her and I both talked about. Neither of us knew about it because this was before the pandemic hit, and now everyone's a TikTok star. But like that, we were going to invite a Gen Zer to come and talk to us about TikTok, because we're both millennials who don't know what TikTok is. And that was like, that was the whole premise of it. And then that's why like things like that, where for example, you saying the New York Times is cool, I feel like to millennials and to probably Gen Xers, the New York Times is cool. Like, it is an established print newspaper that has, continued. It has some of the most world recognized like sections. If I'm not, like, the crossword, isn't the crossword like one of the most popular things in the world? Like, they're
Probably,
yeah,
yeah.
I think their Sunday like, all those things are things that, like, growing up I've always heard the New York Times. So, dude, it's cool. I mean, at least to me, my 36-year-old ass, by all means. Maybe to the younger generation. If you're a young kid out there and you don't like the New York Times, get a learning. There you go.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to bug you a little bit about, and I know this is very much this one always makes me sad. Funny enough, my buddy who on numerous occasions we used to go eat there, Moe's. We used to eat there all the time, very late, often after, because it was just a couple blocks from his work. And I have my copy of the menu from the last day. I remember
Did you steal it?
No,
or did I give it to you?
I bought it.
Oh, I was thinking about the other day. I was like, I can't believe we sold them. Like, what capitalists? Seriously,
but I mean,
they're just giving away.
I mean, I was willing to, because I remember. So one of my favorite things, I went to the Red Bull Crashed Ice event in Quebec City. It was the weekend of St. Patrick's Day. I hadn't eaten in 18 hours, and I get into Montreal. The driver of the bus forgot it was St. Patrick's Day and tried to drive into the parade and got diverted by cops. Anyways, it took forever for us to get downtown Montreal and through the area. And the first thing, my buddy wrote "Rest in peace, Moe's." Yeah, honestly, him and I regularly say that.
Retweet.
Sorry?
Retweet.
I know. Oh yeah, I should tell him. Him and I talk about it all the time, how much we miss that place, because we used to go. Actually, my current partner, one of her and I's first dates was at Moe's.
Oh, I love those stories.
Yeah.
They're my favorite. It's so cute.
Her and I, because she worked at the Children's just around the corner, and I was living downtown myself, somewhere on Fort, and I asked her if she wanted to meet up, and she was just like, I can't really go anywhere. I'm working a night shift. I have a break though, and I was just like, okay, cool. Do you want to go to Moe's? And we went to Moe's at like maybe 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning was her break. She only had like an hour. We like got in, we ordered, and I think we told whoever was working like she has to bounce really soon, and they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. And it was just so great to go and have that meal and hang out, and then I walked her back to work and then walked back home to my place, and I was just like, man, I love this place. And then I bought the menu. I bought on the last day, and I remember they were just like, we don't have many menus left because people have been stealing them all night. So if you're here when we close, I can sell you one. And my buddy and I were just like, well, I mean, we love this place enough to close it out. And we stayed. It was like 3:30 in the morning, and we stayed till you guys closed at 5, I think.
So I was there.
Yeah. So maybe it was you then.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Did I take a Polaroid of you? Was
yes.
That you?
Okay, so you took the Polaroid. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is so awesome. Yes.
So
we still have that Polaroid. My buddy still has it, and we post it. He posted every once in a while being like, R.I.P. Yeah, I mean, for you, because I think you've posted multiple times that, like, you kind of grew up there. I mean, what was that whole experience like, being at Moe's, the history and stuff like that? As much as you can say in a short, I know, because that's a pretty loaded question.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is where I grew up. Like, my grandparents bought it from Moe in the 70s, and then they passed it down to my dad in the 90s, and so I quite literally grew up in that basement. And then I was also homeschooled for part of my childhood for like 2 years.
Okay.
So my mom worked the 2 to 10 shift, and I would just go and be there all of the time.
Oh, wow.
I remember all the Showm people coming in. I remember all the people from the Comedy Nest coming in. It's crazy because I'm actually a South Shore kid, but I feel like a Montreal kid because I grew up at Moe's. Yeah.
In the heart of the city, too.
So yeah, so I went to Dawson, so I was there all the time. I worked there from 16 to right up until it closed.
Yeah,
So it was it was amazing. I'm so sad. It's
I know.
so tragic.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there are some things in the city that just what's that term when they give it an honorary like title? The historians make it like an honorary location,
I
historical
don't know.
locations.
A landmark?
Landmarks, thank you. Yes, landmark locations. I honestly think like Moe's was one of those places that should have been. I know, some of the people are going to be like, but I mean, it wasn't around for like 100 years, but it still had enough culture, and it was still a big enough part of the city. And I mean, it was. I can only imagine what happened the night the Habs won the Stanley Cup in
Yeah.
'93 around the corner from Moe's. Like what kind of night was that? Like
Yeah.
I would love that's a story that I would like love to hear. I'd love to I just someone should make a movie about I don't know. I just.
Well, I can try to get my dad on the show if you want.
Oh my god, yeah, just to ask him just to be like please tell me what happened that night. Like I feel no guilt in telling this story anymore cuz when I was younger I'm not snitching. We were kids and we weren't the ones who did it, but one of my buddies from school came to school the day after the Stanley Cup after the game, and he comes in with like a really nice gold chain. And I look at him and I'm just like, "Oh, dude, that's nice. Where'd you get that?" He's just like, "Oh, my dad got it." I was just like, "Cool. When did your dad buy a gold chain?" He's just like, "I don't know. Last night we were watching the hockey game. Then my dad and my uncle went out after the game, and then he came home with a bunch of stuff, and he gave me a gold chain." I'm like, "Oh my god, dude! I'm pretty sure your dad was in the crowd of people looting the city, and he's just like, oh." I'm like, what's
Amazing.
I'm like, what store do you think was open after the Stanley Cup was won? Like,
Wow. That's
yeah,
crazy.
I know.
That was the year I was born.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was in
was for that one.
I was in grade 5.
Sounds about right. The math checks out.
Yeah, that is so wild, though.
Yeah, it was also open during the ice storm.
Oh wow.
They that I know because I remember my grandma came over to babysit my brother and I because my parents were stuck downtown.
Yeah.
And then they also when the Dawson College shooting happened, a bunch of
Oh
people ran towards Moe's as well. So
yeah.
it was really, it was around for everything.
Man, I forgot about. I didn't even think about that. That was a. Were you in? You weren't at Dawson at that time, were you?
No, that was before I got there.
Okay, yeah. I just remember being at work. I was working at a silk screening shop doing T-shirts, and my boss has the news on, like he always does. We just have the news on in the background,
Mm-hmm.
and we just heard the news, and he looks over at me. He's just like, "Do you have any friends there?" And I was just like, "Wait, what?" And then he's just like, "Oh, you weren't listening." I was like, "No, I'm sorry. I kind of zone out. It becomes background noise." He's just like, he like tells me like what happened. And I that's when I just drew a blank. I didn't even know. In my head I was just like, do I have any friends there? Like you kind of just start to think so many thoughts at once that it's almost hard to lock down one like logical moment and just ask yourself like, that's why a lot of the time now when I feel over like just anxious about something, I take a deep breath and I'm just like, okay, momentary focus. What do you need to do right now? Because moments like that just kind of threw me. Same thing with 9/11, just being at school in Sejep, and everyone in the schools all of a sudden just freaking out. They're rolling out a TV into the Agora because I went to John Abbott College,
Mm-hmm.
and they rolled out a TV, and they started rolling out TVs into every major like student space. So like the library had one, the Agora had one, and somewhere else had one, and kids are just gathered around. And then like people are trying to go to class. Some people are like, I'm not going to class. My dad is bless my father. My dad calls me and is just like, I need you to get home. And I'm like, what? He's just like, it's crazy right now. I don't know what's happening. And I'm just like, Dad, they're not going to attack John Abbott College in the edge of West Island, Montreal. No offense to John Abbott. Not to say you're not important, but you're not the Twin Towers of New York City, you know?
Yeah, different.
Yeah, sorry, Dad. Bless your soul. I know you were just really nervous and freaking out at that moment, but it was just so funny to get a call and be like, "Go home. Everything's in danger." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah."
Oh.
I know. Yeah, I don't fault him. He cares. I love it, but yeah, yeah. I mean that was crazy. So and those moments are actually very interesting as a journalist. For you, what is it like when you are dealing with situations like I mean like this pandemic? What is your thought process? How do you report on something unbiasedly when it's just so heavy and it's constantly everywhere? Like where do you even start?
I mean, I really do. I get kind of overwhelmed sometimes,
Mm.
even just sometimes we translate a lot of articles too from Presse Canadienne, and like they use really strange words sometimes
Mm.
as an phone. So even just that is stressful. So
Yeah,
can
yeah.
you like imagine what it's like when it's like the content is just constantly about a global pandemic? So far it's been okay. I just take time to really make sure that I understand what the story is because there's so many all the time that like it's kind of in like we're like in this niche topic, but because it's such a blanket topic at this point,
Mm-hmm.
story kind of feels like it's not really about COVID-19 anymore. It's
Yeah.
about whatever the subject is within that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no, no. The COVID is so big that the stories aren't about COVID as much as the reactions to COVID and situations affected by COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's all really just in the context of COVID. So it
yeah.
makes it seem a little bit less I don't know. It's interesting because I started this job right as this was happening. Like
Mm-hmm.
I worked 4 days in the newsroom and then started working from home.
Oh,
So in the context of like my job at CTV, it's all I know. I
yeah.
haven't even experienced a regular day outside of the pandemic.
God damn.
So it'll be interesting to see how that like what that's like when this is all over.
What are some of the things that you do to? Because I mean, I hats off to journalists. I know, you know, and you're not all obviously you're not all in the same group. So as frontline, nurses and stuff like that. But I feel like journalism is also important in keeping people informed about the things they need to do to keep themselves safe and
Mm,
just the like what's going on in the world. And social media is very quick to just post things up. A lot of times it becomes who says it first, not who says it best. So
yeah.
so what are some of the things that you do, one, to make sure that when you're reporting on stuff you're saying it best and not just first, and then on top of that, what's the thing you do to decompress after going through reading all of that content? Because like you were just saying, my partner and I will like go through social media, we'll go through the news, we'll read articles, and after 20 minutes we're like, I can't do this anymore. But you're a journalist,
Yeah.
so it's your job to continue to like keep up on that. So what's that process like?
Yeah, well, for the first question, I think the way that I get around making sure that I'm doing it right rather than just doing it first is I take the amount of time that I need to take to feel comfortable with a story that I'm submitting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to submit something if I'm like unsure about what's in it. And I think that I'm a perfectionist. So it's because I'm starting out and because they hired me straight out of J school. I feel a lot of pressure to kind of make sure that I'm doing things right, but also doing them quick.
Mm-hmm.
But I've decided that at the end of the day, it's more important for me to make sure that what I'm reporting on is accurate than to like impress them with my speed. So
Yeah.
I do at the end of the day feel kind of like guilty when it took me longer than I think it should have to write a story,
Yeah.
but at least I know that the story is accurate and balanced.
Yeah.
So
I've
that,
I
yeah, that's
I
kind
feel
of how I deal with
I feel
that.
that that's more important, if anything. I know it'd be again. I know some people would just like to be first, but a lot of the stuff I read out there, the first person often doesn't have all the information, and it just seems more dangerous to me to just be first and have half the story. Then
Well, especially in the context of like a situation where everything's super like changing so
of
rapidly.
course,
There's times when there's a story that pops up that we could report on that I've been like assigned to sort of look into. And I'll be like, I either know this is a non story just because it's a non story,
hmm
or I don't think we should do this story because it could have X effect on Y.
oh, interesting.
Just, yeah, just because things are changing so quickly. Like one day the story is don't wear a mask, we have to save them for healthcare workers, and then the next day is like everybody should be wearing masks. So I feel like because like it's kind of hard to decipher like what you're actually supposed to be doing in this situation. And then there's also like the whole added factor of like I feel like a lot of people don't have media literacy, which just doesn't help. So when there's too much stuff out there, like I've noticed that people don't even look at like the date on an article.
No.
I see people sharing, they share missing persons from like 10 years ago.
Thank you. No, seriously. You know, I love that people are, and for missing persons. Again, I love that people feel that it's important to share this information because their immediate reaction is just like, "Oh my God, someone's missing." Yeah. However, take the time to at least read what you're sharing, guys. I mean, so many times I see stuff like that. You know, one of my buddies, bless his soul, I love it. He's always trying to keep everybody up on stuff and informed. But one of the things that he shared recently bothered me a little bit because he shared an article about how Australia was banning 5G antennas. And this is after everyone had been talking about how 5G antennas could potentially be one of the causes for COVID. And I clicked on the article. The article was from 2018, and it talked about Australia is concerned about 5G technology because the companies that are developing it are from China, and there's a stipulation in the contracts in China that the government has a right to all the information you're collecting. So Australia was just like, oh, that's a security issue. So until that can be looked into a little bit further, we don't necessarily want to have these 5G antennas that are going to be collecting tons of data, and then China, as per the contracts there, have the right to that information. And I was just like, So I told him, I was just like, dude, just a heads up, that article is like 2 years old and is talking about this specific thing. Sharing that headline right now, you know, and that's what you're saying about media literacy. It's also about context, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, I also think like I it frustrates me for sure, but at the same time, like I think that there's no system in place to be teaching people media literacy right now, which is part of the problem. Yeah. So I don't think that it's like I can't get mad at the people who are doing it.
No,
you know?
Of course not. Yeah.
It's just like we haven't figured out how we're gonna teach people how to understand what they're consuming. Like I see people like sharing. No, I was gonna say something mean about a local media outlet that's not really a media outlet.
Okay, so if it's MTL blog, blink twice because I have no shame in throwing those guys under the bus. I'll say for me, you don't have to say anything. I will say, and I say this only because I know for a fact that MTL blog at one point was charging for people to cover stories and stuff like that, and that to me is not journalism. That to me is pay for play. Which I think are two different things, and I think that's me. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to comment. You can stay neutral. I will take that bullet for you 100%. And
Thank you.
Yeah, and I say this to anyone. If anyone at MTL Blog would like to have a conversation with me and discuss this, by all means, you can reach out to me. I just look up Brian Holidae and at me all day, and we can have this discussion. Because ever since they released an article when the Azure trains were supposed to go in the metro, and they wrote an article about it, and then I don't know what happened, but I just know that the STM made them not retract the article, but add all of the STM's edits to the article, and the article was more red text, which was the STM's text, than it was black. And I remember reading that and being like, wait, so these guys reported on something, didn't have the right information, and then the STM essentially came out like a teacher in school and wrote all over their whole homework and then made them post it. Bless the STM for that. They're not always great, but that moment made me happy. And after I read that, I was just like, I can't take the MTL blog seriously.
Yeah, I know people who've worked there before, and they've like sort of walked me through the like process of, you know, the way it all works, and it just doesn't seem like it is, you know, in sync with the things that I learned in the past 3 years.
And
Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and that's fair. That is the most beautifully diplomatic way to say that, and you have a great future ahead of you in diplomacy and journalism. I see you got them skills already. Yeah, sorry. So the second part of my question was, how do you cope with consuming all that? Not necessarily all negative, but a lot of negative information and content.
I think honestly, at the beginning, I was paying really close attention to the daily updates that the premiere was giving, and I was like, okay, what are we at now? And I got really invested until at one point I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It's like increasing too much. So unless I'm assigned to actually report on that, I don't listen to the live pressers anymore, just because I read about them later. It's less intense for me. I'm not, I'm like staying as up to date as I should as a person who works there. But when I'm not working, I try not to look at too much of the content. I just, like I said, I look at enough to make sure that I'm, aware of what's happening for my shift the next day. You know, I'll glance at our Twitter. Mostly I'll just like read some of the headlines to make sure that I know what's going on. And outside of that, I just like unplug after my shift. And I have to, I go for a walk. I'll walk my dog for like an hour, socially distant walk.
Of course.
Yeah. And so that's helpful. And sometimes I'll just go for a drive. The other day it was like raining, and I was like, I'm going to go sit outside of Shaughnessy Cafe and sulk.
Yeah.
And I literally went and drove and parked beside it, staring into it. And I was like, I'm so sad.
I love that though. It's that is such a true and honest thing. I went for a walk the last time I went for a really, really long walk. I left my place. I walked all the way because I just moved. One of the things, I just moved to this neighborhood in Côte Saint Paul, Verdun, something, Wellington. I don't know. Everyone's always telling me I live in a different area. Every time I tell someone the street I live on, they're just like, "Oh, you're in Verdun. Oh, you're in LaSalle. Oh, I'm like, what? Why? What does that mean? Why are there so?
I don't know where I am.
I don't know where I am. But I walked for an hour in east, like an hour out, and then walked like on my way back, and then came to the front door of my place and was just like, and it's pouring rain at this point, and I'm just like, I don't want to go inside. And I just walked another 30 minutes west, like came back past my place and walked 30 minutes west. And I was just walking in the rain on a quiet Sunday morning, like having a conversation, because I even did a Facebook Live on my phone, and friends are like commenting, and I'm like talking to them and having realizations about whether or not I want to have kids live on Facebook while talking to, and just like really processing life in the rain, like a really emo cheesy movie.
Like a music video.
Oh my God, it was so bad. I was just like, God. If it like to everyone who watched, thank you, because if I was someone watching this, I'd be like, what is wrong with this man right now? Is he existential crisis much? Like, it's just this, like, raindrops falling on my face, just like, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like looking at my phone being like, as a black man, could I bring a child into this world right now? It was funny.
I think we're all in existential crisis mode, for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is. It's genuinely, this whole situation is just making me feel a little bit crazy. Now that, so you're a journalist and you're going through all this stuff, what's one thing that you're excited to report on in the next little while? Is there anything that you're like looking forward to discuss and like write about and just be like, oh my God, this is right up my alley?
Like not necessarily to do with the pandemic, or still
no, anything. No, out of pandemic, all.
Okay. So this is it's interesting because I like to report on issues that I think mainstream media tends to let fall through the cracks.
Okay. But
I also feel a little bit conflicted about wanting to do that as a person who's as privileged as I am. So it's weird. Like I'm kind of still navigating how I feel about it. I don't want to be taking space away from anybody else who should be telling their stories themselves. But I think what made me want to go into journalism from the start was just, I've always liked writing, but then I read about residential schools, and I only read about them when I was in university, which was when I was like 21 years old. And I was like, okay, I've lived in Canada my whole life.
Yeah.
Never known that this is a thing that was happening up until like 1996.
Yeah. That's the crazy part.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know if it's just like, if I just see things like through rose-colored glasses, but I'd like to believe that if more people knew that these shitty things were happening, that they would do something about it.
Yeah.
So I want to, expose these realities through whatever way is comfortable for the sources,
Mm-hmm.
in order to bring these situations to light so that we're not just perpetuating all these issues,
Yeah.
systematic issues. So I don't have anything specific in mind, but that's kind of why I wanted to be a journalist to begin with. So sometimes I find, if I have to report on something that feels a little bit fluffy, I try not to be upset about it because it's just all part of it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely I want to write pieces that I think will have an impact on the people who read them. So that's a kind of a broad category, but that's kind of what it is.
I speak as a completely uninformed person. I know about the residential schools. I've never read much about what happened. Weirdly enough, my knowledge of residential schools comes predominantly from TV. TV shows where it's been talked about. Hell, they even did a full episode of Law and Order. No, sorry, not Law and Order. The new show. Oh, FBI Most Wanted. The main character, I think his wife who passed away was Native American from Canada. And they dude from, what's the guy's name from Corner Gas? The police officer from Corner Gas plays the grandfather. There's a whole Native community, and they did a whole episode about residential schools, how it affected some of the kids, how it affected their kids, the generational trauma. Unfortunately, the story was so sad. One of the guys, out super quick, the guy's daughter went missing, and he was never a good father, and he felt bad about that, but he wanted to do something, and so he tried to find his daughter, and then unfortunately it led him down a darker path, and he was essentially a movie. If it was a movie, he would have been a hero, but because Most Wanted is about a real world situation, he was being hunted because he was killing people in search for his daughter. He was torturing people and stuff like that. Again, if this was a movie, they would sensationalize the fact that he's trying to find his daughter and no means take no prisoners. But this was, the real world is just that mentality and approach is unfortunately very dangerous. And then they got to his father, and they started questioning his father about the situation, and they started talking about the residential schools and the culture and what it did to them. And then you find out that the grandfather and the grandmother, their parents hid them when they came to look for the kids to take them to the residential schools. So they were explaining all of that, and I was just like, my God, I didn't know the extent of this, and I'm learning from a stupid American show about Canada's residential schools, and I was like,
yeah,
I was so upset with myself for not being more informed on this, but I mean at the same time, I guess you whatever means necessary to introduce people to that is what they use, and that's why for you, when you say that's something you want to report on, I think if anything that's honorable, and I think there's don't let it. I mean, like you said, it's important to work with the sources to tell the story in a way that's comfortable for them and for you. And I think based on this conversation, if you stay true to who you are, which based on everything you've said, I think is an honorable journalist, and I respect that a lot. And I think you would do a great job covering it, because I don't think you wouldn't do it to sensationalize it, and you wouldn't do it to get your name out there. And, as much as I joked about you winning the Pulitzer, you're not doing it for the Pulitzer. You're doing it because you genuinely want this information to be out there, and I think that's dope. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things, but I'm just gonna turn the light on because it's getting really
yeah,
hot.
Sure. Guys, in a quick minute, just a reminder, you can always keep voting for Geektastic Cypher, which is my other podcast, for Best of Montreal. Those are the poll is still open until May 10th now. They've extended the deadline. But yeah, sorry. So yeah, I mean, that in itself is. I think there is definitely a way to do it, and I think you would find the way. I mean, you sound like I know people who were in journalism when I was in school, and their dream was just to I just want to write about every cool band I've ever heard of. No one said anything about writing about the history from a journalistic perspective, and that not that there's anything wrong about writing about music, but everyone wants to write about music or entertainment. Case in point.
Yeah, and that's the reason I originally went into journalism school. Aside from that thing that I just said, it was also because when I was younger, I had this really strong desire to work at MTV.
Oh, cool! Hey, that's dope.
So I have like a split personality. I'm like super pop culture, but also like super, trying to inform people of things that are shitty that are happening. So I think just going through journalism school made me realize that, there's one of them that I'm kind of more, I think has more impact,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure how much it accomplished that would help the world at MTV aside from like, I really like those Twitter threads where they're like Harry Styles as a door, and then they have like Harry Styles outfits like beside a door that matches it. Those are hilarious. That's probably about all I could contribute to
Man, MTV, God, I really miss MTV sometimes because when I was a kid, MTV was like a legit thing. And then by the time I was in my early 20s, MTV, or early 20s or mid 20s, they weren't showing music videos anymore. And that was so sad to me. And then Much Music and Music Plus, like, Music Plus is completely gone, right? That one's.
I think so.
Yeah, I remember walking by the studio and it's just gone, and I was just like, "Whoa, Music Plus is gone. Like, what does that even mean? What is
I know,
that?" Yeah, like,
what are we doing?
Yeah,
where's Music Plus?
Oh, it's all on YouTube now. Damn you, YouTube! You destroyed it for everyone.
Yeah, that sucks. That was cool. I
really
liked
was.
that.
Yeah. Are there any things in media, like, because speaking of technology and advances, are there things that are you ever worried about how the type of media access people have based on the technology? I know that's a really weird question. I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Does people getting their information from like social media ever concern you? I guess it's the best way to word that.
Again, I think it comes back to the media literacy thing. I don't think it would be a problem if people were able to like actually recognize like a reputable source versus like an ad or even just like fake, like I hate to use the term fake news, but like some people don't even know that there's like they can't differentiate satire from actual art, like it's a real thing, or they don't know that an opinions article is supposed to contain an opinion. They're like, they'll pull it up and be like, this is biased, and I'm like,
yes, it's an opinion piece.
And also like columns and stuff like that. Like they're like, wait, this is biased. How could you write this as a journalist? I'm like, there's a difference. There's a difference.
Yeah.
So I think that social media poses an interesting problem because like tied into that whole, people don't really understand what it is because it's just so easy to access stuff. Like before, back in the day when you were getting your news just on TV or just in the newspaper that arrived on your doorstep in the morning, then you know that it's legit. But now anybody, like citizen journalism, everyone can participate. And it has a lot of power to like do harm. I think there was somebody who was like mistakenly identified as, I think, the Boston shoe bomber.
Yes.
Or something.
I heard, yes. Yeah.
And then, like, this person, like, his family was, like, hounded for days and days and days.
They were, like, calling. The sister had to disconnect her phone and stuff, and,
it's insane. Like, so there's a lot of, potential for things to go wrong, I think. But I think, again, if we figure out a way to teach people how to responsibly consume the stuff that's out there, then we can get around that problem. But I don't know what the solution is. Like, I wrote an essay about it for school. I was like, what is the solution? And I spent the whole time talking about the problem, and then I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you because obviously if we knew, this would be happening.
I had a paper like that when I was in school once. I wrote a paper called The De-Evolution of Human Communication, and it was about how we went from not hieroglyphs. Oh yeah, hieroglyphs. How we went from hieroglyphs to emojis. Like we
full circle.
Yeah, and I remember, and I wrote this in 2003, and I remember saying like, communication is weirdly enough going to de-evolve to symbols again based on the trends. And then when I started seeing emojis pop up like crazy, and now there's an emoji Wikipedia, like an Emojipedia out there. And I was just like, good God, we really are at the end times with communication. At least because I'm again, old school millennial. To me, I was young enough to have experienced the newspaper being dropped off. I was young enough to experience before the internet, legitimately before the internet, like AOL disc coming in the mail. We don't have internet there, and I'm like, what is this? Why is there a disc here? What is AOL? And my dad's being like, oh, it's to connect to the internet. And I'm just like, what's the internet? Yeah. I'm asking my dad nowadays adults are asking their kids, what is this? Yeah,
I feel like that's starting to happen to me, and it's really freaking me out. I too, like, when I was a kid.
Get ready.
I was born in '93, so we didn't have a computer until way later. When we did have one, it was like a Hot Wheels computer. I played those games that you got in cereal boxes.
Yes, I love those.
Yeah, those were actually the best.
Yes.
Objectively speaking.
But
then now, like we were talking about TikTok earlier, I recently will admit that I downloaded the app, but I haven't done anything with it yet because I just don't understand. And every time somebody sends me one, I'm like protesting. I'm like, I'm not going to watch this because why is this a thing? But I was like, I loved Vine, and I think this is pretty similar to Vine. So I don't know why I'm so like extremely opposed to TikTok, but part of me is just like, I don't have the energy to learn this new
fandangled technology.
Yeah, and I'm like having a hard time making a Facebook event lately. I'm like, I don't know what buttons to press.
Oh yeah, they changed the layout.
Okay, well that makes me feel a little bit better. But like, even when I was trying to sign into this webcam, I don't even know what it's called. I was like, how do I get out of my other Google account to get into the correct Google account when there's no button that says new account? Like, I was just like, but I have like, me and Google don't get along, so I'll blame it for that. But I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see, like, I'm like, okay, wait, my keyboard's in French. How do I change it in English? I don't understand. Or like yesterday, I was like, okay, I'm going to use my Apple TV to. I was like, I'm going to put part of my, because I have like a billion tabs open when I'm working.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and in the newsroom we have 3 screens each, but at home I just have my like 13-inch MacBook. So
I
was okay, I can mirror my screen on my TV. I know that.
Yeah.
But I was like, how do I get it to like let me have one thing on there and one thing on here and not like it be? You know what I mean?
Extend screen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Like, and it was just like, hey, dummy, click on display settings.
Yeah.
Over to the other screen, and there you go. And I was like, oh my god, I'm literally my parents.
I'm so happy that a younger millennial is now at the same point. This is making me. I'm sorry that it's making me this happy, but just the fact that like I'm 36 and I've been dealing with this stuff for like 5 years, being like, I don't know how to use any of this technology. These kids keep telling me to get on the Instagram. What's the and now I'm just like on it all the time, on Twitter, on Facebook. Now I have TikTok. Funny enough, I was one of the early adopters of TikTok. I posted my first video months ago, and then and I just kept laughing about the fact that like the Gen Z kids don't want us on there. I was just like, this is every social media, right? Like So at my work, well, before I got laid off, but at my work, when I was talking to the interns, I was asking them, because they're all younger, they're like 21, 22, and I was like, question, why do you guys use this specific app to text as opposed to this specific app? Because there's like 15 apps, and you could direct message in all of them now. So why do you guys choose, let's say, Instagram or Snapchat or WhatsApp or,
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like, oh, well, one girl legit told me, well, Instagram is for this kind of conversation, and Facebook, I don't even use Facebook. That's what my parents use. I only use the Messenger app, and that's for like school projects. And I was just like, oh. And in my soul, it broke a little because like Facebook's what I've always used. So for someone younger to be like, that's what my parents use, I only use it for school. I was like, oh, I'm the old guy. But yeah.
I think that comes, like, for me, I don't really like Facebook very much, but it's not because I didn't used to like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just gotten to a point where, like, I don't know, when I was in high school, it was like the one social media platform that anybody had.
Yes.
And I think it just, like, got old eventually for people that are my age, so it turned into something that was for older people, but it's not, like, we grew out of it. It's not because we were never, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But was because I see you on Twitter quite a bit, but a lot of people I know your age aren't, well, at least from my perspective, don't use Twitter as much.
Oh my god, I love Twitter so much.
Yeah, because I was...
If I delete all other social media, I would just keep Twitter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think it's because I used to be like a certified fangirl.
Okay.
I mean, I still am. I just don't flaunt it anymore. But I was like a total like Jonas Brothers, One Direction.
Ah,
That
okay.
was yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I'm ashamed to say, not the Jonas Brothers part. That's a hill I will die on. But the One Direction thing, I'm not proud of. Um, Anyway, yeah, so
But
I was just like, I just love that you could tag celebrities.
yes.
Like, this goes back to my pop culture side. I love that you could tag celebrities and that they would like see it and reply to you because that doesn't happen
Yeah.
anywhere.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah. On
that's where it
IG,
came from.
on IG, when I tag celebrities in my stories, I'm sure those people are just like, ignore. Like they just swipe right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Twitter is like, I don't know. There's an advantage because again, I think there are less people on it that
Yeah.
would think to message somebody because it's public and probably embarrassing. Like I remember one time I told Josh Duhamel, I like tweeted at him and I was like, "Hey, I just saw you on my screen and like licked it or something ridiculous," and he was like, "Curious to know how it tastes." Also,
Yes.
oh,
Shoot your
okay.
shot, girl. Shoot your shot. That is amazing.
Oh my god, I've done so many embarrassing things like that on Twitter, and like
That's so
once they
epic.
got responses, I was just like, "What? Oh my god!" But they responded, and
Yeah.
it would make me run around in circles. Like one
Oh, of
time,
course.
I'm a really big Ed Sheeran fan.
Okay.
I think that he sold out recently, but for a long time, you know, when his first and second albums came out, I was a really big fan. When nobody really knew who he was,
Yeah.
and one day I tweeted that I wanted him to collaborate with this other singer that I like named Ron Pope. And Ron Pope replied to me, but like he had replied before. He's not that known. Yeah. Or he wasn't at the time. I don't want to say he's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Ron,
No.
watching this, I love you. But yeah, so because he's verified, I guess Ed Sheeran saw him reply.
Oh, dope.
And so then he replied to both of us and was like, "Awesome sauce, I'm a big fan." And then they like exchanged a little bit more, and I was like tagged in it. But then they became like real life friends.
Hot damn, so dude.
Yeah. And then Ron was supposed to go open for him on like his next world tour. It didn't end up working out, but then I went to New York to see Ron, and I met up with him after his show just to be like, "Hi, I love you. I'm the girl who tweeted you and Ed Sheeran." And he's like, "Whoa, you're like literally responsible for our friendship."
Holy dude, yeah. That is so amazing.
Yeah, he was like, "I was in Italy. I flew to New York to have like lunch with him and go watch him on SNL." And yeah, and then me and Ron stayed in contact, and now like I'm regularly like Instagramming with him and his wife.
Dude,
so
that is so cool that you casually tweeted something because it was just, that is speaking true to power. Like you just said, this is something I would like to happen, and tagged the people because Twitter is like that, and that happened. That is so fucking cool. Okay.
I know, that's why I love Twitter, because people see it, and there's no, like I said, there's no other platform where they would. So yeah,
that is so fucking cool. I feel like you know what? I don't want us to try and top that. That is where we're gonna end it. That is one of the coolest stories. It sounds like so much fun. Katelyn, thank you. This was a blast. Usually I only do 20 minutes. We did 58. Yeah, dude, it's been an hour. I know. That's what I'm saying. How fast was that?
That was crazy.
Thank you so much for this. This was such a great conversation. Your social, where can people find you on social media?
Twitter at Katelyn V Thomas.
V Thomas. Okay. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
The actual Katelyn Thomas hasn't tweeted since 2013. If you guys want to go report her.
Give me my name. Give me my name. Okay, I'm gonna tag you and everything. I'm gonna post this, and yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you so very much for this. This was so great, especially since it was like such a last minute thing, but it was so much fun to talk with you. And yes, I'm gonna keep in contact with you via Twitter.
Sounds good. See you on Twitter.
Definitely. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, you can vote Geektastic Cypher Best of Montreal, Category 24, Best Podcast, cultmtl.com/vote Best of MTL. That's the whole show, guys. Katelyn, thank you so much again. Everybody stay safe. That's it. That's all, guys. I don't. Should I play some? Yeah, let's continue with the music there. Let's put them back on. Bye, all.
Bye.